The first splinter of wood cracking was louder than I expected. It echoed in the pre-dawn stillness of my street, a sharp, definitive sound. I stood in the driveway, hands clasped behind my back, watching the two city-contracted workers with the calm detachment of a project manager observing a scheduled demolition. Their crowbars found the seam between the jamb and my front door, and applied steady, municipal pressure. From the dark interior of the house, a shape materialized in the new, gaping opening. Boyd. He was silhouetted against the warm light of the kitchen, wearing yesterday's t-shirt, unshaven, his face a mask of sleep-addled confusion. In his hand, the chipped, "World's Best Uncle" mug I'd never bought steamed gently. He blinked at the workers, then at me, standing like a foreman in the driveway. "Silas?" he called out, his voice rough with sleep. "What in the hell is this? It's 6 in the morning. I didn't answer. I simply watched as the hinges, the ones I'd oiled every spring for 15 years, gave a final metallic shriek of protest. The door came free in the worker's gloved hands, leaving a raw, open rectangle into my home. Boyd took a step back, coffee sloshing over the rim of his mug onto the foyer tile I'd had imported from Spain. "Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? I need to know this story is reaching the right people." I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the contractor, a man named Carl, who was watching the exchange with the weary patience of someone who'd seen this script before. I simply raised a hand, index finger extended, and pointed to the notice taped to the remaining door jamb. The paper fluttered in the damp Portland morning air. "Major renovation," I said, my voice flat, a recitation. "Notice of commencement. Filed with the City Building Department, permit number BLD 202308741. It's all there." Boyd ripped the notice from the wood. He scanned it, his eyes darting over the municipal seals, the legalese, the official stamps. Then he laughed, a sharp, barking sound that held no humor. "You think paper scares me? This is your brother's family, you miserable bastard. We have tenants' rights. My kids are in there." He crumpled the notice into a ball and threw it at my feet. It was a gesture meant to be defiant, but it only underscored his fundamental error. He saw the paper as the threat. He didn't understand that the paper was merely the receipt. The threat was the system that issued it, the codes it invoked, the inspectors it would summon. It was the immutable law of load-bearing walls and permitted egress. Tenants' rights pertain to landlord-tenant relationships established by lease or payment, I said, still addressing Carl, as if Boyd were a noisy piece of machinery. This is owner-occupied property undergoing permitted renovation. All required notices for entry and work commencement were served via certified mail to this address 30 days ago. I finally turned my head a few degrees toward Boyd. The return receipts were signed. B. Henderson. That's you. His face, flushed with anger, paled slightly. The mail. He always signed for packages, for anything that looked official, a habit from his various business ventures that required a signature. He'd signed his own eviction notice and hadn't even read it. "You tricked me," he sputtered. "I notified you," I corrected. "The permit is active. The work has commenced. The structure is now unsound for occupancy. City inspector is due at 10 a.m. I checked my watch. 87 minutes from now. If he finds occupants in a declared work zone, the city will red tag the entire property. No one gets back in. Not you. Not me. The fines are substantial." I saw the calculation fail in his eyes. Confrontation he understood. Guilt he could weaponize. But a city inspector? A red tag? A fine schedule? This was a language he didn't speak, a battlefield where his charisma was worthless. He stood there on the lawn, in his bathrobe, suddenly looking less like an outraged patriarch and more like a man who had just heard the lock click on a door he never knew was there. The afternoon sun was hitting the patio at a perfect 78-degree angle, illuminating the dust motes dancing over the mismatched lawn chairs. I watched from the kitchen window, my hand resting on the cool granite countertop I'd specified for its non-porous, easily sanitized surface. Boyd had drawn an audience. Cora and Leo from across the street stood on my flagstones, their body language a study in concerned neighborliness. Boyd was in my favorite Adirondack chair, the one positioned for the optimal view of the Japanese maple. My own brother-in-law, Boyd sighed, the sound carrying through the cracked window. He spread his hands, a gesture of benevolent confusion. So rigid, so unfamilial. He let the word hang there. He built a real house, sure. But there's no sense of a home here. Not of what really matters. I felt my jaw tighten. He was performing a perfect structural analysis of my flaw, using the wrong terminology. He was calling load-bearing principles rigidity. He was labeling intentional negative space coldness. Leo shuffled his feet, looking at the overgrown flower bed Boyd had promised to weed 3 weeks ago. He's always been quiet, Silas has. Quiet? Boyd gave a soft, rueful laugh. It's more than that. It's a systemic lack of heart. All these rules, the thermostat schedule, the recycling bins. It's like living in a very polite museum. He leaned forward, addressing Cora directly. Family is chaos, Cora. It's laundry on the couch and extra plates at the table. It's life. He wants a blueprint where people are just furnishings. Cora nodded slowly, her gaze drifting over to the detached garage where Boyd's motorcycle was leaking a small, iridescent puddle of oil onto the concrete apron. She was comparing philosophies. Boyd's chaotic, emotional warmth against my clean, predictable, cold. He was reframing his trespass as generosity, and my ownership as a kind of emotional poverty. It must be hard, Cora offered, not specifying for whom. You try explaining to your kids why their uncle minds so much that they drew on the hallway wall, Boyd said, shaking his head. It's just drywall. It can be painted, but the memory? The laughter they had doing it? That's permanent. That's the real structure. I watched as he expertly laid this cornerstone of his argument. He was building a case, not with documents but with sentiment. A permit of guilt. He was preparing the witnesses so that when the real pressure came, their testimony would be colored. Poor Boyd, they'd think. Just trying to bring some warmth into that cold, perfect house. I looked down at the blueprint on my counter. Not for a building, but for a legal process. The lines were clean, the boundaries unambiguous. He could talk all he wanted about drywall and laughter. But drywall has a specified thickness, a fire rating, a code. And the hallway wall was mine. I turned from the window. The performance would continue without my audience. The next move required no applause, only a trip to the municipal building department. Let him have the patio. I was drafting the foundation for his eviction. The paper was warm from the printer, the ink still smelling faintly of toner. Boyd slid it across the kitchen island with a magician's flourish. I didn't touch it. From my position, I could read the header, bold and absurd. Retroactive property management and habitation fee schedule. Ran the numbers, Boyd said, leaning back against my refrigerator, arms crossed over his chest. Turns out, having us here has been a real value add. Security, maintenance, general upkeep of the asset. He gestured vaguely at the living room, at the laundry mound on my Eames chair replica. Call it a compromise. We stay, you pay. Keeps it simple. Family. My eyes tracked from the itemized list, $200 per week for landscaping oversight. He'd mowed the lawn once. In September, $150 per week for thermal regulation management. Adjusting the thermostat, up to his face. The smirk was fixed, a piece of bad taxidermy. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was a shakedown. A poorly calculated, hilariously documented one, but a shakedown nonetheless. Or, he continued, the word hanging in the air like a bad smell, we get a lawyer. Really talk about our rights. Tenant rights, Silas. They're a thing. You can't just put family out on the street. That was the moment. Not with a bang, but with the silent, internal click of a deadbolt sliding home. The last thread of hope for a peaceful resolution, a thread I'd been clutching with a desperate, bleeding grip, didn't just snap. It vaporized. All the anxiety, the sleepless nights walking on eggshells in my own home, the quiet fury at every misplaced mug and unwashed dish. It crystallized into something cold, hard, and operational. I finally picked up the paper. I made a show of reading it, my architect's eye noting the inconsistent margins, the lack of a total sum. I see, I said, my voice flat, devoid of the tremor I felt in my hands. I folded the paper once, precisely along the line of the header, then again. I slotted it into the breast pocket of my shirt. Boyd's smirk widened, thinking he'd won. He saw the capitulation in my calmness, not the calculation. I'll need to review this, I said, turning away from him, already walking toward my home office. Thoroughly. You do that, he called after me, a victorious edge to his voice. Take your time. I closed the office door. Not with a slam, but with a soft, definitive thud of the pneumatic hinge. I didn't sit at the desk. I stood in the center of the ordered room, my sanctuary, and took the permit folder from the top drawer. The city's stamped notice of commencement of major renovation was inside, a rectangle of bureaucratic authority. I laid it on the blotter. Then, I took Boyd's ridiculous invoice from my pocket, unfolded it, and placed it beside the permit. Two documents. Two mutually exclusive realities. One was a legal fact, filed with the city. The other was a fantasy of leverage, printed in a moment of arrogant stupidity. He wanted to talk about lawyers? About rights? He had no idea what system he'd just wandered into. My system. I opened my laptop, the glow illuminating the two pieces of paper. The game had changed. He'd just handed me the playbook. The air in Maya's apartment smelled of coffee and laser toner. On her dining table, my blueprints for the house on Cedar Street were weighted down at the corners by thick legal volumes. This wasn't a family discussion anymore. It was a filing. Full envelope replacement, Maya said, reading the description on the city's permit application form. She didn't look up from her laptop. Windows and doors. It's a major alteration. Requires a licensed contractor, scheduled inspections, and vacant possession for safety. Correct, I said, my voice steady. I was taping a series of time-stamped photographs to a board. The cracked front door frame Boyd had ignored, the drafty, single-pane windows, the water-damaged sill in the guest bathroom. It was no longer my brother-in-law's mess, it was a building's documented deficiencies. We are not asking him to leave. We are stating that the structure will be legally uninhabitable for the duration of the work. The city inspector will confirm that. Maya pulled up the municipal code on her screen, her finger tracing the lines. Section 24.80.110. The permit holder shall ensure the worksite is clear of all occupants and personal effects not directly related to the permitted construction to allow for unimpeded access and safety compliance. A thin, sharp smile touched her lips. He thinks you're a pushover, Dad. He has no framework for this. He doesn't understand that a piece of paper from the city carries more force than 100 shouted arguments. I filled out the notice of commencement with architectural precision. Property owner, Silas A. Grant. Contractor. To be determined, a necessary fiction for now. Description of work. Removal and replacement of all exterior fenestration and entry points. Estimated duration, 6 to 8 weeks. Each field was a brick in a wall Boyd couldn't charm his way through. The first inspection is for site readiness, I said, more to myself than to Maya. Scheduled for Tuesday, 8 a.m. If the site is not clear and safe, which it won't be, the permit is flagged, fines begin to accrue daily, and the city can issue a vacate order for the property to abate a code violation. And he'll have no one to fight but a faceless inspector in a hard hat, Maya finished. She hit print on the permit application. The printer whirred to life, spitting out the most potent document I had ever held. He operates on guilt and family loyalty. This operates on calendar days and dollar amounts. He doesn't speak the language. I signed the forms with my usual, precise signature. There was a quiet thrill in it, not of malice but of correct process. This was the system functioning as designed. I was not a vengeful brother-in-law. I was a property owner complying with municipal renovation statutes. The moral high ground was surveyed, graded, and legally permissible. We tell no one, I said, gathering the documents into a pristine folder. Not Cora and Leo. Certainly not your mother. The power is in the surprise, in the official city envelope arriving, in the inspector's truck idling at the curb. He can't prepare a defense against a process he doesn't believe exists. Maya handed me the folder. To the building department, then? To the building department. The weight of the folder was negligible. The weight of what it represented was immense. I was not raising my voice. I was raising a drawbridge constructed entirely of bureaucracy, and I was about to pull it up, bolt by legal bolt. The silence from my end was a weapon. I stopped returning Boyd's increasingly smug text messages. I let the lawn go unmowed. From Maya's spare room, I watched the security camera feed on my phone as a parade of unfamiliar cars filled my driveway for what Boyd had billed as a housewarming. The bass from his music thumped through the digital feed. He'd won, in his mind. The quiet architect had been shouted down, had slunk away. The kingdom was his. What he didn't see was the PDF that landed in my email at 4:37 p.m. The subject line: Permit approval, notice of commencement. The city's digital stamp was a thing of brutal, beautiful bureaucracy. I forwarded it immediately to the foreman of demolition specialists NW, a man named Gus whose voice sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. "We start at 7, he'd said. "We're loud. You sure the house is empty?" I looked at the camera feed. Boyd was on my porch, holding a beer and laughing. "It will be," I told Gus, my voice steady. "Have your crew meet me at the property at 6:45. Bring the skid steer." I spent that evening with Maya, reviewing the permit line by line. The scope of work was broad, invasive, and perfectly legal. She'd highlighted the key clause: access to the entire premises is required for the duration of the approved renovation. There was no exemption for squatters, family or otherwise. The law, once set in motion, was a machine. And at 5:30 the next morning, as a gray dawn bled over Portland, I turned the key in the ignition of my car, the printed permit lying on the passenger seat like a warrant. The machine was about to arrive. The air was cold and smelled of sawdust. At 7:05 a.m., the high-pitched whine of a reciprocating saw biting into exterior trim cut through the suburban quiet. I stood on the front walk with Maya, watching as the two-man crew, efficient, silent, wearing dust masks, worked their way around the first window frame. From the living room, visible through the new, gaping hole where the front door had been, I could see Boyd, Marcy, and the kids huddled on the mismatched sofa under a blanket, their faces pale and shocked in the morning light. Across the street, Cora and Leo stood on their porch, coffee mugs in hand, silent witnesses. Maya nudged me gently with her elbow. "Now," she said, her voice low. "While they're all here." I took a breath, the crisp air feeling surgical in my lungs. I walked up to the threshold, where the door jamb now ended in splintered wood. I didn't step inside. Boyd's eyes met mine, wide with a confusion that was rapidly curdling into anger. "What is this, Silas?" he called out, his voice still thick with sleep. "You can't just—" "The permit," I interrupted, my voice flat, carrying in the stillness. I held up the city's stamped document, the paper crisp and authoritative. "It's for a capital improvement. City Code 14B22. I paused, ensuring the neighbors could hear the municipal chapter and verse. "Habitation during full building envelope removal is expressly prohibited. The structure is now legally uninhabitable." Boyd blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means the building has no weather barrier," Maya said, stepping up beside me, her paralegal tone cool and precise. "No sealed doors, no intact windows. It's a construction site. It's not a residence at this moment. For insurance, for liability, for code compliance. You have to vacate." Marcy stood up, the blanket falling away. "You're kicking us out? Into the street?" "The notice of commencement was posted 72 hours ago," I said, my eyes still on Boyd. I was reading from a script we'd drafted, line by line, the night before. It outlined the scope. Full window and door replacement constitutes envelope removal. The law doesn't see a house right now. It sees a hazard. Boyd surged to his feet, his charisma failing him, replaced by a sputtering indignation. "This is family. You can't hide behind some paperwork." "It's not paperwork," I said, finally meeting his gaze fully. The saw whined again as another window frame loosened. "It's the system. The one you said was for suckers. It's the only thing left talking, Boyd." I saw it then, the dawning realization in his eyes. He looked from my impassive face to Maya's resolved one, to the permit in my hand, to the worker prying a window frame from his son's bedroom. His kingdom of comfortable entitlement was being dismantled, not with a shout, but with a zoning code. His weakness, his contempt for the bureaucratic machinery, was now a wall he couldn't charm or argue his way through. The law, dry and procedural, was finally speaking. And for the first time, he had nothing to say back. The sound of the saw had finally stopped, replaced by Boyd's sputtering indignation. He stood in the center of the living room, a plume of drywall dust settling on his shoulders like gray snow. The gaping hole in the exterior wall framed a perfect view of Cora and Leo's concerned faces on their porch across the street. "You can't just— this is my home," Boyd managed, his voice a mix of anger and genuine confusion. "I have rights. Family rights." I said nothing. I simply looked at Maya. She didn't need a cue. She stepped forward, the screen of her tablet glowing in the dim, dust-choked light. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried the weight of a judge's gavel. Portland Municipal Code, Title 29, Chapter 29.30. Habitability Standards. She didn't look at Boyd. She read the text to the room, to the hole in the wall. A dwelling unit shall be maintained to provide weather protection. Exterior walls shall be maintained to prevent the entrance of moisture and vermin. A dwelling unit shall have heating facilities properly installed and maintained in safe working condition. Boyd waved a hand, dismissing the words as if they were gnats. That's lawyer speak. This is a family matter. It's a code violation, Maya stated, her eyes finally lifting to meet his. A serious one. And it's not the only one. She scrolled. Chapter 29.34. Sanitation. Accumulation of rubbish, garbage, and other waste that creates a health or safety hazard is prohibited. Her gaze swept over the piles of discarded takeout containers and building material debris that lined the hallway. The structural integrity of the load-bearing wall you partially demolished is also now in question. That falls under the state building code, which the city enforces. I watched Boyd's face. His charismatic certainty, his tool belt-toting persona of the capable guy, began to crack. He understood hammers and saws. He understood emotional leverage and familial guilt. He did not understand, nor did he respect, the slow-turning gears of municipal bureaucracy. To him, it was abstract nonsense, a game for suckers. You filed a piece of paper, he scoffed, pointing a dusty finger at me. That's all this is. A piece of paper from some desk jockey. It's a notice of commencement for a major renovation, I said, my first words in several minutes. My voice was flat. It's a matter of public record now. The city knows work is being done here. An inspector can, and likely will, come to verify the work meets code. What they will find, I gestured to the panoramic view of my neighbor's azaleas, is this. The bluster met the immovable object. His disdain for the system left him utterly defenseless against it. He had no counter-argument, no clever riposte. The facts, as Maya laid them out with cold, paralegal precision, were irrefutable. The house itself was the evidence, a testament to his negligence. The cool Oregon evening air was already streaming through the opening, carrying the scent of damp soil and finality. Boyd's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in bewildered frustration. He was a man who just tried to shout down a mathematical equation. The numbers didn't care. The law, in this case, was just math. He looked from the hole, to Maya's impassive face, to the permit notice I still held, then back to the hole. The reality, vast and complicated and official, was finally seeping in through the opening he'd created. The traffic from I-5 is a constant, grinding hum through the single-pane window. It's not a sound, it's a physical pressure against the side of my skull. I'm sitting on the edge of the one full-size bed, the synthetic bedspread itchy under my palms, staring at the water stain on the ceiling tile that looks like a crude map of a country I've never heard of. Boyd is pacing the 7 feet of worn carpet between the bathroom door and the television stand. His phone is pressed to his ear, his free hand chopping the air to punctuate a plea I can hear every other word of. 200, that's all I'm asking. No, listen, it's just for one more week, until this thing with the union representative. I know what I said, but the situation is. Because it's a motel, Deb. It's a weekly rate. It's not a. What do you mean, Agan? His voice, usually so full of buoyant, unearned confidence, is thin. Sandpapered down by a week of these calls. He's wearing the same polo shirt he had on the day he left, a faint coffee stain now set into the fabric near the collar. His kingdom, reduced to this: a particle board desk, a microwave that smells of burnt popcorn, and the pervasive scent of industrial cleaner trying and failing to mask something deeper. He stops pacing, his shoulders slumping. The performative energy drains out of him, leaving a smaller, older man in its place. Fine. Yeah, okay. Tell Mom I said hi. He ends the call and doesn't throw the phone. He just places it carefully on the desk, screen down, as if he can't bear to look at it. For a long minute, the only sounds are the highway and the drip from the bathroom faucet he hasn't managed to fix. You need a ride somewhere? I ask. My voice is quiet in the cramped space. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here as a form of closure, a final site inspection. He doesn't look at me. Where's there to go? That's the real consequence. Not a dramatic blow-up, not a legal decree read aloud in a courtroom. It's this: the diminished reality, the transience, the utter lack of a foundation. For a man who built his life on the borrowed stability of others, this cheap room is a perfect, terrible mirror. There are no systems here to manipulate, no emotional contracts to invoke. There's just a weekly rate, payable in advance. I stand up. My own reflection is ghosted in the dark television screen. A man who looks tired, but solid. Anchored. The permit is filed. The dumpster gets delivered tomorrow. The contractors start Monday. He finally turns. There's no anger left. Just a hollow kind of bewilderment. You'd really do it? You'd really tear it all apart? It's not tearing apart, I say, adjusting my glasses. The gesture feels architectural, a final adjustment to the plan. It's a controlled demolition, followed by a rebuild. There's a difference. I leave him there, in the map of the water stain and the hum of the highway. I close the door softly on the diminished reality. Outside, in the parking lot, the air smells of diesel and rain, clean and sharp. I get into my car, the seat perfectly adjusted, the silence my own. I don't drive home immediately. I just sit for a moment, listening to the absence of argument, the absence of someone else's chaos leaking into my space. The only sound is the turn of my own key in the ignition, a precise and satisfying click. The silence is not an absence, but a presence. It has weight and texture. I sit at my new kitchen island, a slab of cool quartz where Boyd's greasy pizza boxes once lived, and the only sound is the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of my ceramic mug meeting the stone. Outside, the new windows present a flawless, sealed view of the yard. They are double-paned, argon-filled, with a low E coating. They keep the weather out and the quiet in. The front door is solid core, with a multi-point locking system. I watch a leaf skitter across the porch, and it makes no sound at all. This is what I built. Not just the door, the windows, the repaired drywall where Boyd's entertainment center was bolted in. I built the condition that allowed for this silence. I think of the chaotic symphony that lived here for 18 months. The blaring televisions, the shouting, the constant, grating vibration of other people's lives resonating through my own walls. I had tried to be a negotiator, a diplomat, a patient brother-in-law. I had tried to appeal to a shared history, to decency, to family. All of it was just noise, adding to the cacophony. The peace I have now wasn't negotiated. It was architected. I filed the permit. I followed the code, to the letter. I invoked the rules of the city, the covenants of the neighborhood, the cold, hard facts of property law. I presented Boyd not with an emotional appeal, but with a procedural reality he could not charm or bluster his way around. The notice of commencement was my blueprint. Maya's paralegal precision was my surveying tool. The sheriff's deputy, simply doing his job, was the final inspector. I take another sip of tea. It's steeped perfectly. There is no one here to use my mug, to leave the bag in the sink, to complain about the lack of sugar. Some might say I won. But winning implies a contest, a struggle where someone else must lose. This was never a contest. It was a reclamation, a correction. Boyd didn't lose a game. He was simply presented with the immutable boundaries of a system he'd chosen to ignore. His weakness was his contempt for the framework, and the framework, once properly engaged, is merciless. The moral isn't about victory over a person. It's about sovereignty over a space. My space. The peace I feel isn't the glow of triumph. It's the clean, neutral relief of a problem finally solved according to a logical, sound plan. It is the quiet satisfaction of a load-bearing wall doing its job, unseen and essential. Sometimes, peace isn't found. It's constructed. You draft the plans, you secure the permits, and you build it, one enforceable rule at a time, until the structure is sound, and the silence inside is your own.